Hi, I'm Jeff, and welcome to another one of my videos where I take a look at all the new comic books coming out on either July 11th or 12th, 2023, and I ask myself the question, what one new comic book would I buy this week if I could buy just one book? I know I've been telling you in all these videos how much I want to make them shorter, and I've been failing at that, but I really mean it. But there's also a lot of books that I want to tell you about this week, so I'm going to try my best to move through them as quickly as possible. Let's kick this off first by taking a look back at my pick from 2 weeks ago, which was The Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos. And the question remains, was it a worthy and worthwhile pick to be my just one book pick of the week? And the answer is yes. Yes, I absolutely enjoyed it. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, The Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos is basically the story of a teenage mad scientist dealing with his confusion of his massive intellect and trying to exist in a normal world when he's anything but. And in this world are other monsters and monster hunters. And so there's a lot of personal conflict, internal conflict for this character. There's a lot of external conflict. There's a lot going on here, and it's been really an enjoyable read, really interesting, really compelling, really thought-provoking, really emotionally investing, all of the things that I look for in my comic book reading. Now, a lot of you are saying, well, of course, Jeff, you're saying this because it's by James Tynion IV and you love James Tynion IV. It's true. I do. And while this is an idea of his, created by him, it's being written by Tate Bromble, who's doing a wonderful job with it. This might turn some people off, but it kind of has a young adult feel, but definitely on the older side of that, because I mean, one of the first things the character says is the F word. So it's not for little kids, but it does have a young adult vibe in its, teenager trying to find self-acceptance kind of underlying narrative going on. But I gotta tell you, even as an old guy, I'm interested in being encouraged to accept myself more. So I'm really enjoying it. I really like it. It was definitely a worthy just one book pick. If you read The Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos, I'd really know what you thought of it. Really would like to know what you thought of it down in the comments. All right, let's go ahead and move forward and start talking about the books that are coming out this week. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to tell you about all of the tie-ins that are coming from DC. Last week, I told you about this whole Night Terrors thing that they're doing and all the tie-ins. I'm basically just going to read one of the descriptions, and I'm just going to tell you what the tie-ins are for this week. First, I want to tell you about Night Terrors, issue number 1 of a 4-issue limited series from DC. Here's the description. Who is Insomnia? Hello, ghouls and ghosts. This is Boston Brand, aka Deadman, and I'll be your supernatural tour guide across the Night Terrors stories. After that fancy special oversized issue you have to read first last week, the whole world is trapped inside their nightmares, and Batman and I are trying to figure out who Insomnia really is and why he wants revenge on the heroes of the DC universe. I just want to say real fast, I like this as a tie-in concept. Everybody's been forced into a dream world and they have to deal with their individual nightmares, both heroes and villains. I find that to be an interesting premise. If you are going all in on this Night Terrors tie-in event and you're reading them all, please check in with me in the comments from time to time. Let me know how you're enjoying that. But the other tie-ins that are coming this week is that there is a Night Terrors The Flash. Issue number 1 comes out this week. It's a 2-issue limited series. Same with Night Terrors Green Lantern, also issue 1 of a 2-issue limited series. We also have Night Terrors Robin, also issue number 1 of a 2-issue limited series. And we have Night Terrors Shazam, also issue number 1 of a 2-issue limited series. And finally, we have Zatanna, issue number 1 of a 2-issue limited series. If any of these are your favorite characters, you might want to check it out. Or like I said, if you're going all in on Night Terrors, bless your heart, and you have my sympathy. All right, let's go ahead and move forward now and tell you about the next thing I want to tell you about. And that is a new book that's coming out this week. That new book is called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Stranger Things, issue number 1 from IDW. Here's the description. 11, Max, Dustin, Mike, Will, and Lucas are looking forward to a non-threatening, fun-filled trip to New York City. With the gang hundreds of miles from Hawkins, they're sure to catch a break this time. That is, until they encounter a threat both bizarre and familiar, and some allies that are just bizarre. This summer, the kids from Hawkins meet the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's all you need to know. It's a crossover between Stranger Things and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If that does something for you, here you go. The next book I want to tell you about is a new book. It is called Steel Siege, issue number 1 of a 3-issue limited series from Battle Quest Comics. Here's the description. In a war-torn world, the Titan mechs of House Sora are on a rampage to annihilate their enemies in the last of the Generator cities. The only hope for peace is a bitter ex-soldier, Vulture, and a diplomat, Dove, who must get across a battlefield filled with hundreds of deadly machines that will stop at nothing to destroy them. Wow, if you were looking for a comic book this week that seems to promise a lot of action, you might consider picking up Steel Siege. The next book I want to tell you about is another new book. It is called Savage Squad 6, issue number 1 from Dark Horse. Here's the description. The year is 2037. A brutal world war has left humanity in shambles. Remnants of civilization are tracked down and systematically eliminated by the Scourge. For the people of the Central Colonies, only one hope remains. An elite team deployed into the deadliest location on the planet, Savage Squad 6. All right, this sounds like another action-packed adventure. This time in a semi-post-apocalyptic world. Yeah. If that's interesting to you, here you go. The next book I'm going to mention to you is a new book. It is called The Lonesome Hunters, The Wolf Child. This is issue number 1 of a 4-issue limited series from Dark Horse. Here's the description. From Russ Manning Award-winning and Eisner-nominated Harrow County co-creator Tyler Crook comes this supernatural fantasy about loss, power, and destiny. Monster hunters Howard and Lupe are on their way to get rid of the powerful sword, but car trouble leaves them stranded in a small town that is being terrorized by a magical wolf and a mysterious child in a wolf mask. While waiting for car repairs, Lupe befriends the child, and she and Howard are drawn into a war between the townspeople and the deadly beasts. It's a coming-of-age fantasy adventure. Although I don't think the description is fantastic, this actually does a really pretty good job of getting me interested, and it sounds kind of interesting to me. So this is one that I'm not sure I'm going to buy this week. I'm going to pick it up off the shelf. I'm going to flip through it. Something about it seems to capture my attention. I might pick it up this week because this is a light week for me. But right now it's a wait and see kind of choice I'm making there. The next book I want to mention to you is another new book. It is called The Hunger and the Dusk, issue number 1 from IDW. Here's the very long description that I'm going to try to get through as quickly as possible. Hugo and World Fantasy Award winning writer G. Willow Wilson and all-star writer Chris Wildgoose invite readers to experience love on the brink of extinction in their new ongoing high fantasy tour de force. In a dying world, only humans and orcs remain, mortal enemies battling for territory and political advantage. But when a group of fearsome ancient humanoids known as the Vangal arrive from across the sea, the two struggling civilizations are forced into a fragile alliance to protect what they have built. As a gesture of his commitment to the cause and to the relief of his bride-to-be, Fran Stoneback, the most powerful orc overlord, Troth Icemane, sends his beloved cousin Tara, a high-ranking young healer, to fight alongside brash human commander Callum Battlechild and his company of warriors. With a crisis looming, the success of this unlikely pair's partnership and the survival of their peoples will depend on their ability to unlearn a lifetime of antagonistic instincts toward one another and rise above the sting of heartbreak. Ah, God, what a wordy, convoluted description. But the idea is that orcs and humans don't get along, but they are the only people left until this other humanoid group shows up, and they have to work together against this third group. It's an interesting concept. It's an interesting premise. If you're into fantasy worlds, orcs and humans, and them working together toward a common goal, this might be interesting to you this week. The next book I want to tell you about is X-Men, Days of Future Past, Doomsday, issue number 1 of a 4-issue limited series from Marvel Comics. Here's the description. The cataclysm that leads to the X-Men's dystopic future. Return to the future in a tale that reveals the events leading up to the timeless original Days of Future Past story that's inspired spin-offs, films, and more. In a world where mutants are more than simply hated and feared, but not yet slain and apprehended, the assassination of Senator Kelly comes to pass, bringing with it the Mutant Control Act and Sentinels on every corner. But with mutant kind on the back foot, what lengths will Kate Pryde, Wolverine, Colossus, Storm, Banshee, Angel, Cyclops, Professor X, and the rest of the X-Men go to in order to find some way to survive? And what scheme of Magneto will bring about their ultimate doomsday? Witness the 30-year descent into the dystopic future, replete with the previously untold depths of key mutant characters as we flesh out one of the most celebrated X-Men timelines in its own series for the first time. This is really exciting to me. I'm a big X-Men fan, this era of X-Men specifically. Days of Future Past is a storyline that has had so much impact on the comic community. It's considered one of the best stories of all time, one of the best X-Men stories of all time, and it only was in 2 issues of X-Men. Well, now we're going to get 4 more issues fleshing out that story, and I'm really, really excited about that. I was not going to pick up this book, but then when I started doing research for this video, I saw this and I was like, yes, 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 give me that. And in fact, this was almost my pick of the week. And it would have been if it was written by Chris Claremont. I don't know why they didn't get him to come back to do this, but they didn't. They did get somebody who was very, very good. Mark Guggenheim is doing the writing of this, and Mark Guggenheim is an established, solid, great name in writing of comics. So good for that. I just wish it was Chris Claremont because I love him so much and his era of X-Men. Anyways, if you're a fan of the X-Men, if you're a fan of this era, if you're a fan of Days of Future Past, I highly recommend picking up this Doomsday, this X-Men Days of Future Past Doomsday mini-series. And speaking of X-Men, I'll just let you know real fast that there are 2 facsimiles coming out this week that you might want to have on your radar. There's a facsimile coming out for X-Men 101. That is a high-value book. It's the first appearance of Phoenix. Definitely worth checking out and reading. In addition, we have a facsimile coming out for Hulk 181, the first appearance of Wolverine. Now, this is not the first time that there has been a facsimile released for Hulk 181, which is why, if I were you, I wouldn't pick up the regular version of it. I do believe, if my information is correct, that this is the first time we are getting a foil version of Hulk 181 as a facsimile. That's the one I'm going to be picking up. That's the one I would recommend from you, and strongly recommend, because I do think that there is some potential upside there on this book down the line. The next book I want to tell you about is a new book. It is What If? Dark Loki, issue number 1 from Marvel Comics. Here's the description. Walter Simonson returns to his illustrious run on Thor, but this time Loki's in charge. A tale of one of Asgard's worst days and one of Loki's best. I really like What If stories because all the rules are thrown out the window for these. They don't have to worry about killing certain characters or, the future at all. They can just tell a great story, and then when it's done, it's done. So What If stories are really, really exciting that way. So if you're a fan of that type of storytelling, you might consider picking this up. Also, if you're a big fan of Loki or Asgard or Thor and all this stuff, might be another reason to check it out, to see what happens, when a story goes Loki's way. Definitely worth checking out. The next book I'll want to let you know of is a new book. It is called Web of Carnage, issue number 1 from Marvel Comics. Here's the description. Carnage shall inherit the earth. As Cletus Cassidy exacts his revenge on an unsuspecting city and carnage reigns across the Marvel Universe, the Carnage symbiote remains left to its own devices, adrift among the stars. With its purpose renewed after the death of the Venomverse, Carnage has scant few hurdles between it and a glorious ascension to the throne of the King in Black. And the first is named Morlun. There are those of you who can't get enough Venom, can't get enough symbiotes, can't get enough Carnage. This one is for you. And if you're getting kind of tired of symbiote stuff or Carnage stuff, I understand. But do keep in mind, this book is written by Ram V. Ram V is a solid talent in the comic book industry, so hopefully that means that this will be a story worth checking out. So if you're a Carnage fan, if you're a Venom fan, if you're a symbiote fan, I would steer you towards Web of Carnage coming out this week. The next book I want to let you know about is a new book. It is called Fallen Friend, The Death of Ms. Marvel, issue number 1 from Marvel Comics. Here's the description. The heart of the Marvel Universe has stopped beating. Kamala Khan died a hero's death in Amazing Spider-Man 26, saving our entire universe. Come join the other heroes of the Marvel Universe, the creators of Ms. Marvel, and comic fans everywhere in honoring and remembering one of Marvel's brightest stars. If deaths mattered in comic books, then this comic book would matter. But since deaths in comic books don't matter, this comic book doesn't matter. Why do I tell you about it then? If you're a big Ms. Marvel fan, you're going to read this, and I recommend that you do. If you're not, you're not going to care. But in case you are that Ms. Marvel fan, I wanted you to know that that's coming out this week. The next book I want to tell you about is a new book. It is called Sirens of the City, issue number 1 of a 6-issue limited series from Boom Studios. Here's the description. New York City, 1980s. Runaway teen Layla struggles to survive on the mean streets far from home. But now, every supernatural creature from the darkest corners of the urban grime is after Layla, and the child-to-be she never wanted growing inside her. This gritty urban fantasy created by Joanne Starrer and Excellence's Kari Randolph shines a light on bodily autonomy in a patriarchal world. This was interesting to me in the first 2 paragraphs. When you tell me about a runaway teen living on the streets of New York in the 1980s, I'm interested. When you tell me about supernatural creatures are coming after her and her unwanted unborn child, now you're telling me about external conflict and internal conflict. I'm very interested in all of this. But then when you end with shines a light on bodily autonomy in a patriarchal world, you start to, my concern starts to raise. I'm okay with political messaging in creative storytelling if it's buried. If it's buried way down below, kind of, isn't front and center. It's just kind of there for me to discover for myself. This last paragraph is implying to me that there's going to be a political lean to it that's a bit in my face, and that is a lot less interesting to me. So because of that, I don't plan on picking up this book this week, but if you do pick up Sirens of the City, let me know what you thought of it down in the comment. Was there a social message that was a little heavy-handed, or did they do a good job burying it, and were you able to just kind of go on the ride that the story takes you on? My last honorable mention this week is a new book. It is called Antarctica, issue number 1 from Image Comics. Here's the description. Stargate meets His Dark Materials in a new non-stop sci-fi action blockbuster. Hannah's life imploded the day after her father failed to return from the secretive Smith-Peterson research station in Antarctica. Alone and on the street, she's at her lowest ebb when a friend offers help. Retrained as an engineer, Hannah secures a job at the same Antarctic station to search for her father and stumbles headfirst into a conspiracy that threatens everything she's ever believed. This book, for me, I'm having a similar reaction to it as I did the Lonesome Hunters, the Wolf Child book. This Antarctica book sounds like it could be interesting. It could be a really engaging and entertaining story to check out. But I'm not quite sure. I'm in a wait and see mode. So both of those two books, I think I am going to flip off the shelf, take a look through it a little bit. If it looks compelling, then I'll buy it. And if not, I'll probably let it go. So those two are edgy for me. I'm buying X-Men and I'm buying my Just One book pick, but those other two are a bit edgy for me. And that brings us to the one book that I would buy this week if I could buy just one book. And that book is Fish Flies, issue number 1 of a 6-issue limited series from Image Comics. Here's the description. Jeff Lemire brings you a new tale of small-town surrealist horror in this special, extra-length debut issue. When a brutal and violent crime puts the life of an innocent teenage boy in the balance, it sets off a chain of events in bucolic Belle River, Ontario, that will permanently change several residents' lives. And as the manhunt heats up, a lonely girl named Franny Fox will form an unlikely friendship with a fugitive that leads them on an odyssey of discovery and redemption. So this book is written and the art is also done by Jeff Lemire. Jeff Lemire is a very good writer who works a lot in comic books. I will say that Jeff Lemire's style, to me, is a bit weird in a good way. This is how I like to equate it. I'm a big fan of the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey. If you watch 2001 and you try to understand what's happening, like, wait, why is that person doing this? And why is that person doing that? And why is the computer saying this? And why? You're going to hate the movie. Because if you try to intellectualize it too much, it's frustrating. But if you just sit back and relax and enjoy it experientially and just go on the ride moment to moment, and just kind of give yourself over to the experience, 2001 is practically unsurpassed in filmmaking. To me, Jeff Lemire does a similar thing. You can't over-intellectualize it or be like, well, why is this person doing this? Or what's happening here? You just go along for the ride and you can get some exceptional things that way. And I expect Fish Flies to be the same. Now, one thing I will, so from a reading standpoint, I think there's a lot that's worthy to check out here. From a spec standpoint, I'm a little bit more on the fence. There was a free comic book day version of this Fish Flies book. I have it, I've read it. From a storytelling perspective, it was interesting, but from a spec potential, I'm a bit concerned that the free comic book day book is going to kill the spec potential of this book. I don't know if the content in the free comic book day book was a preview or if it was a prologue, meaning original material that won't be found in this new issue 1 coming out this week. If it's a prologue, the free comic book day is super important because it has several first appearances in it, including the woman the little girl who's on all these covers. So you know that that's going to be important. If it's just a preview, some people might say, well, it's just a preview, so it's not really as important as issue number 1. Regardless, if you can find the free comic book day version of Fish Flies, I definitely recommend picking it up. But if you're thinking of picking up Fish Flies strictly on spec, keep in mind that free comic book day book does exist and could potentially hurt the spec of this particular issue. But regardless, I think that it's worth collecting from a spec potential standpoint, giving a shot, because it still could have value in the future if something ever happens with this story being optioned or anything like that. And as a read, it definitely interests me. And so for those reasons, that is why Fish Flies is my just one book pick for this week. Hopefully I got through all this information very quickly, and hopefully it was valuable to you. If it was at all, please hit the like button. I really appreciate it a lot. And if you haven't already subscribed, I invite you to go ahead and do so. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.